Hey guys, welcome to Nerdarchy, for Nerds by Nerds. I'm Ted, hanging out with
Nerdarchy's Dave.
And today we're going to talk about what does player agency mean. We've had some video responses and some comments in some of our videos, so I figured we'd just throw it out there.
But before we do that, you guys can jump down in the description below, click the link, join the Nerdarchy newsletter, get weekly tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
Now, there's lots of RPGs that have used player agency as a core mechanic for the game, but it's something that's as an idea, it's fairly new to D&D. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, when you look back and see that D&D spans from like 1973 to 2016, right. In the greater scope of things, player agency is very new to Dungeons and Dragons. For a good portion of this hobby, your dungeon master expected to either write an adventure or come with a pre-planned adventure, and you guys were going to kind of do that. Now, that being said, I feel like there's always been innovators throughout the history of the game, and the other thing too is there's definitely a large segment of people, they only play Dungeons and Dragons. They have very little or no experience with other
or even exposure
or experience with any other RPGs, which I highly recommend that you go out and play some other games. Like there's tons of great games out there. D&D is only one of them, and there's like other games that do different things better than D&D for the type of game it is.
Right.
So, they're all considerations, but, we recently, did a video about, when a player character ambushes the DM, right? And so they actually went and did a video response to that, and we went, and we didn't even realize it until right before we shooting this video. We went to see, there was a comment I wanted Ted to read from the person that, inspired the video.
Right.
And I was like, oh, wow, he really has a completely different idea what player agency means to him
than what I do.
Yeah. And I was like, I find that interesting, fascinating.
So the comment was like, okay, well, the DM, he writes a story, he creates the world, so therefore the DM is God.
Old school way of thinking.
Player agency gives control of the story to the player, so therefore when using player agency, the player is God, according to this theory, the Scott. Now, for the most part, I have really good players.
He also makes a really strong distinction between non-player character and player character, which his line of thinking here is weird to me. But it's his opinion, and he's entitled to it. But he puts player characters up on a pedestal,
right? And
the NPCs are just
they're
it's
fodder for the world,
right? It's like the NPC joke that you always see in different memes, oh my god, I'm an NPC. No, my life sucks. Right? Essentially, that's what it means,
right? So to look at both sides of these things, number one, I've got good players at my game, and I tend to be in games where the DMs are going to trust their players to not step outside of a certain comfort zone of their power level. Now, in one of my recent games, I said, all right, you guys are traveling, something happens. And I threw it out there. And it could have, the players could have said, oh, well, we fought this, or we found this. And there could have been, treasure or something oh, well, I came upon this magical grove, and blessings were blessed, were thrown down upon me. But no one took that kind of initiative. No one put themselves on a pedestal or the party on a pedestal to reap any kind of rewards. They put out something that was interesting and allowed role playing to wind up happening. And it could have been a combat, it could have been a role-playing, it could have been, exploration. But, it went down the road, it went down. But ultimately, when someone says, well, this is what happens, if someone's like, oh, well, I happen to find a +4 legendary artifact that was just, lying in a pile of stones, so I have this now, right? Because, you gave me agency. Well, I would step in as a DM and say, no, that did not happen. Because ultimately I have to guide the story, and if You say that, the next time I give someone else player agency, they're going to be like, well, he got a +4 artifact. I'm going to find a +4 artifact. And then we get into a Monty Hall game in a world that,
a war of munchkins.
Yeah, a war of munchkins in a world where, Chime of Discordia, Ulthgania isn't really designed to have those kinds of things lying around.
Now, oddly enough, like, Scott is, like, definitely, like, he's basically just proclaimed himself as the bannerman for player agency and what that means, and he's he's calling for all players to challenge their DMs and create interesting stories. But oddly enough, like, Scott wouldn't do like any of the things you just described. He would add when you're doing player agency, in my mind, it's you have player agency to create within the story, not within the mechanics. They're completely two different things. The story is you're making up interesting things, facts, NPCs, encounters, but they don't necessarily have a mechanical benefit to them. So, I think like a player who's using agency and using it right understands that. They understand that they're given a privilege, really, and it's like your driver's license. It can be revoked. like if you're in a game and you offer player agency, you might be like, everyone has player agency but you. Well, why don't I have player agency?
Because this is what you did last time.
Because you're a jerk. Like, you're abusive.
Now, going back to the other comment about PCs and NPCs, PCs are designed, and if you look at the 5th edition player's handbook, they're designed to be heroes. They break what I would consider a lot of like standard things. Like, they're able to do so much that a non-player character is unable to do. But as soon as you start to say, okay, well, every single NPC is down here and PCs are up there, that changes the scope of everything. And it really doesn't allow for you to ever really have, a powerful PC, or a powerful good NPC or a powerful, villain. So there has to be those who excel above the norm that are still NPCs.
Well, here's the thing, right? If you're reading a book and you're reading a book and there's different characters in the book, and some of them are main characters, some are supporting characters, right? But let's just say that book is a real world, is a real place full of living, breathing people, right? Do the supporting characters actually know they're supporting characters? I would say no. Like, they wouldn't know. And then, like, or if you take that same tag, like Elminster and Gandalf, do they see the party as the non-player characters and they're the player characters? Like, so where does it begin and where does it end? Right. Like, there's never going to be an exact translation. But, there's always the possibility that you have someone that is extremely powerful in your campaign and they're also an NPC. Well, just being a PC is not quite enough to put you above them, right? Especially if you've just started. Like, going by that logic, as a first-level character, you're going to be above that NPC, and he's 20th level. He's slain dragons. He's banished demons, and it just doesn't work.
Now, in the example that Scott gave, he's a 7th level wizard, and there's a 10+ level character. Now, I believe that when I put him, like, his initial description, in my opinion, I gave enough evidence to clearly demonstrate how powerful he was. Now, yes, it's possible that in the right circumstances, someone could defeat him, but you've got Aeson Shardgale, 7th level wizard, very low hit points, does not have a con, or not. I don't know whether he's got any con or much to speak of, versus the dwarven wizard who, like, was described as like visually massive, even though he was short.
Yeah.
And with a dwarven heritage, that you're going to expect a decent constitution, and he was above that. Now you're adding bonus hit points almost equal to the die itself.
Yes.
That's going to put him at such a significant advantage. Now you add,
not even counting his offensive capabilities and defensive capabilities.
Right. So I am sorry, if the insults were put out there, but sometimes NPCs are going to do that, and not every single NPC that you're going to encounter are you going to be able to take.
Yeah, or are they going to fawn over you and worship you because you're a player character? And look, all that being said, Scott went into that knowing he described it the best. He had a Powerball's chance in winning.
Right.
And he accepted that going. I mean, he's like, I can roll 3 straight 20s, and that NPC can get 3 crit fails,
right,
and I could win.
Now, going back to the actual concept, of agency, like you really have to accept what is within the level of of your player character, of the game, of the setting, and do things that's thematic, do things that are going to be cool, things that are going to possibly give you stepping stones off to other places, be it quests, things to explore. These are the kind of things that agency should really take you down.
Social interaction.
Social interaction.
Like in your example of the bad use of player agency, right? Mm-hmm. If that same player would go, "Hey, I met this old man who tells the legend of and named the legendary item and all of its deeds and things like that." Like, that's perfectly fine, because they've introduced the idea and concept of this thing into the world and into the game.
But he's not holding it right here to hand it out to you.
Yeah, he doesn't have it. He doesn't now have it strapped to his back, and the DM still has the power to go, okay, the story that you heard is true, and that old guy is there, but it's not what he said it was. He actually made the story up, or he heard the story and it really is just a story.
He elaborated upon the story that he's heard, and you wind up questing and questing and questing, and you keep finding somebody, and every time they're telling, it's a little less grandiose until you find out that. Yeah, it's a
magic dagger +1.
It's a magic dagger. That's it.
It was a great sword of legendary, but no. So like player agency should never be about usurping the power of the DM or dungeon master. It should be about adding to the story, building a rich world, and adding to the fun. So like, I'm not like. It's funny because I listen to Scott describe player agency and say what it is to him, but it never really seems like he doesn't play it that way, in my opinion. Right. I mean, like over the last couple of sessions, that was the first time I really saw any real evidence that NPC player totally different. But for the most part, he uses it in the spirit of what it's meant to be, in my opinion.
I would agree. And to the DMs out there who haven't really experimented with it, try it out. I really feel that player agency, when controlled and when used by good players,
responsible players, like, you get something that's very powerful, and it actually is going to save you some time both in prep and it's going to allow you to add more to your game than you're doing. Because the players are going to do something that's going to be interesting and appealing to themselves. And, I really feel that player agency is one of those things that, it's going to do a lot for you, and it doesn't really require anything beyond just allowing a little bit of control out there. And as Dave says, you've always got the power to be like, no, or to change what's been said in a way that's going to, be more fitting with your game. I would say I wouldn't want to absolutely just say no to the player agency, what they did with it, unless it's like you said, all of a sudden they have this legendary +4 weapon in their inventory. Yeah, that's a problem. But I would absolutely be okay with them, basically having an idea where to find something like that in their opinion.
Right, in their opinion.
And, and then you can work with it from there. And see, because this is cooperative storytelling now. They told a piece, now I get to tell a piece, and then I'll tell my piece, and then their character's going to do things and interact. And at certain points, maybe they'll get to tell another piece, and then and then I'll get to respond to that, and we can build a story together.
Right. And the last thing I want to talk about with player agency, if you didn't happen to see the gameplay where I really put agency out there, is if you're running, standard combats, and you've got a lot of combat scheduled for a session, try something new. Instead of rolling dice, just have them describe what's going on. And you could have players be like, oh yeah, I leap into combat and I swing my greatsword and 3 of their heads go flying. Great. That's awesome. Now if he does that every single round, well, that's going to get droll and dull unless you're fighting 47 kobolds by yourself. Well, then that's humorous, because a great sword versus kobolds, that kind of stuff can happen. And if you're allowing cleave type things, then yeah, that totally can happen. But
I think I should actually pull out parts of those videos with just the examples of because it'll be much shorter than actually the whole gameplay. If people wanted to check those out, maybe I'll get around to doing that.
But try just to tell the players, all right, going into the battle, this is an overwhelming victory for you guys. This is a hard match, or this is a challenge, and use those levels of, all right, how does the battle go? And no player is going to be like, all right, well, I do this and my character dies, unless they really want to get rid of their character. But you could be like, all right, well, George has been dropped and Fred is down on one knee and he's bleeding out. All right, well, the cleric rushes in and he does this, and you could have very cool effects that happen if they're willing to embrace those concepts, and you don't have to go through, even though 5th edition really trims it down, you don't have to go through a long, drawn-out combat.
And you can just use elements of that, and you wouldn't do it all the time either.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
At a certain point, there's no point in playing Dungeons and Dragons or any other role-playing game for that, because you're just telling stories.
Right.
But as a small piece, it could be done, or maybe you handle the battle of the horde like that, and then then after that's wrapped up, it's the players versus the chieftain or whatever,
the chieftain, the boss,
and then you go to a traditional roll it out and have the combat and have the battle.
Right.
So there's definitely different tools you can use for that.
That's a good usage there.
So with that, you guys, what do you think? Let us know in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe. You
can head over to nerdarchy.com and check out the cool articles there.
Until next time,
stay nerdy.